I'm taking you up to a hill, or a nant, a little stream that runs off a hill in the Clwydian Range, designated landscape, which is in northeast Wales, and I'm taking you up to see the legacy of some no-fence tree planting. I'm Jonny Hulson, I'm the Land Management Development Officer at North Wales Wildlife Trust. The challenge with trees, as I'm sure you know, particularly in the uplands and the Welsh uplands, is the supposed incompatibility with rearing livestock, particularly sheep. And the traditional approach to creating woodland has been to plant the trees and then fence it off. And obviously that's quite important usually to keep livestock out, but we met a pioneer about 15 years ago. His name's Steve Watson. He goes by the alias of the Tree Shepherd, and Steve kindly introduced me to this method to establish trees, just basically thinking like a sheep. So if you're a bit more clever in how you plant the trees, you don't actually need any fences. We learnt from Steve about how to think about growing trees and planting trees in a way that sheep and cattle might avoid them, and therefore hopefully encouraging more landowners to think about integrating trees into the landscape ecologically, but also for the welfare of the animal, giving lots of protection in the harsh winter months. When we have particularly hot summers, there are livestock up here that are in desperate need of shade, and these trees are accessible to livestock for shade and shelter, as well as providing habitat. These alders have been planted in a way that have escaped browsing, and they've survived. And you can see that particular alder is out competing the gorse, and the gorse is naturally dying back. So we've got oak, and then there's birch, alder and rowan. There's two oaks, and you can see they're in pots. With no fence tree planting, because there's no fences to protect them from livestock, the trees need a helping hand. And obviously these trees have been established in these pots, which we can reuse because they're just bags, and they're also quite easy to handle. So when you're going up a hill, you can just put them under your hand. So they need to be about 1.5 meters, really, at least, because when you're planting them, you want them to be, but you can sort of see, if you can imagine I'm planting that on a hill, it needs to be like this. So the leading shoot is out of the escape. If you imagine there was a sheep where you are, you know, the sheep wouldn't be able to reach that leading shoot, and it will eventually grow out like a hockey stick. One thing you have to be aware of is the roots. So it's nice to have hard standing, so because the roots going through the pot, but you don't want them to, because they're an absolute nightmare to get out of the ground otherwise. And obviously there's some fertiliser in there, the trees are moist, the root ball's established. As soon as we plant it, that tree's got to fend for itself. We're not going to be coming there weeding these trees. If it dies, it dies. If it survives, it survives. So you want to give it the best chance of establishing without fences. So you're putting the extra resources in just to, because you're not spending money on fences. So this is what you call a rabbiting spade. You see it's got a point on it. So it's very efficient because you can use it like a spear, like that. Because that's all you need really. You just need to use the weight of the spade for, you're not really digging a hole, you're just, it's more of a T-notch really, where you put the spade in and then you break it up in the shape of a T. You're trying to make use of the soil and making sure the soil doesn't roll down the hill. So this type of spade just allows you to be more precise and not overexert yourself. And this is also a useful piece of kit. It's just a bar, basically a breaking bar. It's got a point on one end and a more flat end on this, so you can use both as a little spade. But because it's so heavy, it will break up rock. When you're trying to get trees in here, this can be really useful to do that heavy work for you. Just letting the weight of the bar just break the ground up. And once you've broken it up enough, you just put that aside and use the rabbiting spade. I've just walked a short way up from where the alders were planted, just to see where I could find a microsite to plant this oak. this pot grown oak. And you can see it's quite steep here, but if I planted the tree in there and orientated it so it was growing out like that, you can see sheep that are up here aren't going to be able to graze the leading shoot, and any sheep that are down here aren't going to be able to reach it either, and the tree is going to grow up and out over the stream, out of the reach of the browsing sheep. So I'm going to start digging a hole to get that oak into this crevice. I've also put a bag on the top of the hill because I don't want the soil washing away into the stream. Soil's really precious up here because it's very rocky, so I want to save any soil just above it. So once I planted the tree, I can bring it in from above to fill in the hole. So I'm going to start with the bar with the pointy end first. And I think here would be a good place to put it. So I've used the bar to break up the rock just to make it easier for myself. So I'm just using the rabbiting spade now to bring out any of that precious soil that I'll need to backfill the tree once it's planted. You can see you can just use it like a spear with one hand, just gives you the extra bit of leverage in the hole. So I'm just going to use my hands to get out the rest of the spoil. So I'm happy with this size of this hole now. I've used the bar to break up the rock to make it easier for myself, and then I've used the rabbiting spade to give me a chance to get some of that spoil out, which I've piled onto the bag above me to save. So now I just carefully get the pot from the bag. So there's the nice root ball in the pot. So that tree's got a nice head start. Once I plant it, nobody's going to come back to tend to this tree. It's got to look after itself. But you can see the tree is growing on this side of the pot. So I want to make sure that that side of the tree is on the lower side, because as you can see, if I planted it like that, in terms of gravity, the tree isn't wanting to grow that way. Because of gravity, the tree wants to grow upwards. So that's the way the tree wants to grow. I'm just giving it a helping hand. So I'm putting it in that way, like that. And you can clearly see it's now going to grow out like a hockey stick. And because these leading shoots, there's no way a sheep on the top of that bank is going to be able to reach these leading shoots. I'm actually really happy with the way that tree is now. I'm just going to backfill it with the soil from the bag with my hands. All we're trying to do is just prevent any risk of the frost getting into those exposed roots. There we are. You know, if you're planting trees or creating a woodland, it's, you know, you're really thinking about the next generations and safeguarding the land, making it more resilient, particularly to climate change and pests and diseases. We're having more extreme weather events, and I think everybody's realising that, whether you're a forester, a farmer, or an ecologist, we're realising the challenges we're facing with the weather. So doing simple things like this can really give resilience for future generations.